The chamber was vast and cold. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, filled with representatives from 800 species. The lights were dim, designed for the sensitive eyes of the majority. Humans had always found the Galactic Assembly uncomfortable. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood at the speaker's podium, his hands resting calmly at his sides. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was steady. Behind him, a holographic display showed Earth spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "The motion before this assembly," announced the speaker, a towering creature with 4 arms and skin like polished stone, "is to permanently exile the human species from all galactic trade routes, communication networks, and shared territories. Councillor Vethran of the Dravani hegemony will present the final arguments." Vethran rose from his seat in the upper tier. He was thin, almost skeletal, with pale blue skin and eyes that never blinked. The Dravani had always hated humans. They called them dangerous, unpredictable, and too ambitious. "Fellow members of this assembly," Vethran began, his voice smooth and practiced, "we have debated this matter for 3 standard years. The evidence is clear. Humanity expanded faster than any species in recorded history. They refused to sign the genetic modification treaties that would make them more compatible with galactic society. Their birth rates are uncontrolled. Their territorial claims grow every cycle." He paused, letting his words settle over the chamber. "The most concerning is their nature. Humans come from a death world, a planet so hostile that they evolved to fight, to kill, to survive against impossible odds. They eat the flesh of other creatures. They wage war among themselves for sport. They cannot be trusted to exist peacefully among civilized species." Daniel Carter listened without expression. He had heard these arguments before. They were not entirely wrong. Earth was harsh. Humans were survivors. But the Assembly had twisted these facts into something ugly. "I move that we vote," Vethran concluded. "Let us end the human problem before it grows beyond our control." The speaker turned to Daniel. "Ambassador Carter, you may offer a final response before the vote." Daniel stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every organic and mechanical observer focused on the lone human standing at the center of the room. "Councillor Vethran speaks of danger," Daniel said quietly. "He speaks of our nature, our world, our history. He's not wrong about what we are. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and our own mistakes. We learned to fight because we had no choice." He looked up at the thousands of faces watching him. "But we also learned something else. We learned to cooperate, to build, to dream. Every great achievement of humanity came not from our violence, but from our hope. We reached for the stars not to conquer, but to explore. We joined this assembly not to dominate, but to belong." He let the silence stretch for a moment. "You see us as a threat because we are different, because we do not submit, because we refuse to change our nature to make you comfortable. But ask yourselves this, in the 200 years since we joined the galactic community, how many wars has humanity started? How many worlds have we conquered? How many species have we harmed?" No one answered. "None," Daniel said. "We have been peaceful neighbors. We have traded fairly. We have shared our knowledge and our culture. And in return, you offer us exile." Vethran shifted in his seat but said nothing. "So be it," Daniel continued. "If this assembly chooses to cast us out, we will go. We will not beg. We will not threaten. We will simply leave." He turned to face Vethran directly. "But understand this, Counselor. Isolation works both ways. You are not just closing us out. You are closing yourselves in. And one day, you may discover that the galaxy is darker and colder than you imagined. On that day, You may look toward Seoul and wish you had made a different choice. He stepped back from the podium. Humanity has nothing more to say. The speaker raised one massive arm. The vote will now commence. All in favor of the motion to exile Earth, signal affirmative. Lights began appearing across the chamber. Green for yes. Red for no. Daniel watched them spread like a disease. Green overwhelming red in almost every section. The final count appeared on the central display. 847 in favor. 203 against. The motion passed. A murmur of satisfaction rippled through the chamber. Veteran allowed himself a small smile. Several delegations began applauding quietly. The speaker's voice cut through the noise. The motion is carried. Earth and all human territories are hereby exiled from the Galactic Assembly. Humanity is given 60 standard days to withdraw all citizens from galactic space. After this period, any human vessel found outside Sol System will be subject to seizure or destruction. Daniel Carter nodded once, his face revealing nothing. He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence as he passed the Volothi delegation. A young diplomat named Yura Sen caught his eye. She had voted against the exile. Her expression was troubled, almost apologetic. Daniel paused beside her. "Remember this day, Ambassador Sen," he said softly. "Remember who stood with us and who stood against us." Then he continued walking, leaving the chamber behind. Outside, the corridors of Valoran Prime Station were empty. The other delegations were still celebrating inside. Daniel pulled out a small communication device and typed a brief message. "Admiral Garrett, Protocol Quiet Sun is now active." He sent the message and slipped the device back into his pocket. Then he stood by a window, looking out at the stars. They thought exile would break humanity. They thought cutting off trade and communication would force humans to wither and die, isolated in their single system. They had no idea what they had just done. Humans did not surrender when cornered. They did not weaken when challenged. Every great leap in human history had come from moments exactly like this, moments when the world turned against them, and they had no choice but to rise. The galaxy had made its decision. Now humanity would make its own. Daniel Carter watched the stars for a long moment. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked toward the docking bay where his ship waited. 60 days. That was all the time they had been given. It would be enough. The withdrawal began 3 days after the vote. Captain Ryan Torres stood on the bridge of the transport vessel Meridian, watching the Kethrani trade hub grow smaller in the rear display. His ship was carrying 4,000 human civilians, families who had lived on the station for generations. They had been given less than a week to pack everything they owned. "Captain," his first officer said quietly, "the Kethrani security forces are broadcasting again." Torres nodded. "Put it through." The speakers crackled with a harsh, clicking voice. "Human vessels, this is Kethrani Station Control. You are reminded that any items purchased or manufactured using Kethrani resources must be surrendered before departure. Failure to comply will result in search and seizure." Torres looked at his cargo manifest. The Kethrani were demanding they leave behind medicine, clothing, children's toys. Things bought and paid for with human money. He pressed the response button. "Station Control, this is the Meridian. We acknowledge your message. However, our legal team has reviewed the trade agreements and found no clause requiring surrender of personal property. We will be departing as scheduled." There was a long pause. Then the clicking voice returned, angrier now. "You have no legal standing here anymore. Human. You are exiles. Your agreements mean nothing." Torres smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Then I suppose you will have to come and take them from us." The channel went dead. The Kethrani did not pursue. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human colonies packed up and left. Research stations went dark. Military outposts folded their flags and withdrew. The exodus was massive, coordinated, and strangely quiet. That was what bothered the Watchers most. The humans were not protesting. They were not fighting back. They were simply leaving, with calm efficiency and an unsettling silence. On the Andover Research Station, Dr. Angela Price supervised the final shutdown. She had spent 23 years here, studying quantum energy manipulation. Her team had made breakthroughs that could have changed the galaxy. "Doctor," her assistant said, "the Vorlethi delegation is requesting access to our research archives. They say it belongs to the galactic scientific community." Angela looked at the young man for a long moment. Then she walked to the main console and began typing commands. "Doctor, what are you doing?" "Deleting everything," she said calmly. "Every file, every experiment, every discovery. If they want our knowledge, they should have thought about that before they threw us out." The assistant stared at her. "That is decades of work." "It is our work," Angela replied. "They exiled our people. They do not get to keep our minds." The files disappeared one by one. 23 years of research, gone in minutes. When the Vorlethi finally forced their way into the station 2 days later, they found empty servers and blank screens. Commander Nathan Cole coordinated the military withdrawal from a small vessel hidden in the asteroid belt of the Torvin system. On the surface, his job was simple: get all human ships back to Sol System before the deadline. But beneath that surface, he was doing something else entirely. "Report," he said into his secure channel. A dozen voices responded, each from a different location across the galaxy. "Deep space sensor. Network Alpha is online and hidden. Defense. Satellite Grid 7 has been repositioned to coordinates 974. Resource stockpile Gamma is secure. Enough raw materials for 20 years of construction." Cole nodded to himself. The assembly thought they were watching humanity retreat in defeat. They had no idea they were watching humanity prepare. On the 45th day, Admiral Lisa Garrett addressed the crew of the USS Resolute. The ship was the flagship of Earth's defensive fleet, a massive vessel carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. But today, it was leading a convoy of civilian transports, shepherding the last wave of refugees home. "We have 15 days remaining," Garrett said, her voice carrying across the ship's speakers. "Every human being outside Sol System must be home before that deadline. I do not care how tired you are, how angry you are, or how much you want to turn this ship around and make them pay for what they have done. Our mission is to bring our people home. That is all that matters right now." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The galaxy thinks they have defeated us. They think exile is the end of humanity's story. Let them think that. We know the truth. This is not an ending. This is a beginning." The crew worked without rest for the final 2 weeks. Every transport was checked. Every passenger was counted. Every ship was guided safely across the border into Sol System. On the 60th day, the last human vessel crossed the boundary. Behind them, the automated defense platforms activated, sealing Sol System from the outside universe. Communication arrays went dark. Trade routes closed. The borders that had been open for 2 centuries slammed shut like prison doors. Only, they were not locking humanity in. They were locking everyone else out. On Valoran Prime, Council of Vethron watched the final reports come in. Every human had left. Every station had been abandoned. Sol System was now completely isolated. He stood before the Galactic Assembly and raised his thin arms in triumph. "It is done," he announced. "The human problem is solved. They are contained in their single system, cut off from resources, from trade, from knowledge. In a generation, they will wither. In 2 generations, they will be forgotten. The galaxy is finally safe. The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had feared humanity for decades celebrated their victory. The nightmare was over, but far away, on the bridge of the USS Resolute, Admiral Garrett stood in silence. She watched the last flicker of galactic communication die on her screens. Then she turned to her crew. "Now we wait," she said quietly. "And while we wait, we build." The stars beyond the window were cold and distant, but they did not frighten her. Humanity had stared into the darkness before and found ways to light it. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs, and when the time came, the galaxy would learn what that choice meant. 6 months passed in silence. Merchant Zolvek had not worried at first. The Dravani trader had dealt in human goods for decades, but he had always assumed they were replaceable. Luxury items. Clever novelties. Nothing essential. He was wrong. The first sign of trouble came when a customer demanded a refund. The creature was a Volothi elder, ancient and wealthy, and he had been buying human medical compounds for 30 years. "The treatment has stopped working," the elder rasped. "My doctors say the synthetic version you sold me is useless. I need the real medicine. The human medicine." Zolvek spread his hands helplessly. "The humans are gone. There is no more human medicine. Then find an alternative." "There is no alternative." The compound was derived from plants that only grow on Earth. No one else knows how to make it. The elder stared at him with failing eyes. "Then I will die." Zolvek had no answer. The elder did die. 3 weeks later. He was not the last. Across the galaxy, similar problems appeared. Power cells designed by human engineers began failing, and no one knew how to repair them. Communication networks that had run smoothly for decades started glitching because the software was human-made, and no one understood the code. Agricultural systems that had been modified by human scientists to feed billions began producing lower yields. The joke species, the dangerous primitives from the death world, had been quietly holding the galaxy together, and no one had noticed until they were gone. Ambassador Yura Sen sat in her office on Vorloth Prime, reading report after report of failures and shortages. She had voted against the Exile. She had warned the Assembly that humans were more valuable than they realized. No one had listened. Now she was trying to fix the damage. "Open a channel to Sol System," she instructed her communication officer. "Use the old diplomatic frequency. Mark it as a personal message from my office." The officer hesitated. "Ambassador, the humans have not responded to any communication in 6 months. Official channels, emergency signals, nothing. Try anyway." The message was sent. It floated into the void towards Sol System, where it joined thousands of other messages from dozens of species, all asking the same thing. "Please respond. Please help. Please come back." The humans answered none of them. Inside Sol System, humanity was not suffering. They were thriving. Secretary General Marcus Webb walked through the construction yards orbiting Mars, watching massive ships take shape in the vacuum. These were not the old vessels humanity had used before, slow, underpowered, designed to match galactic standards. These were something new. "The new FTL drives are ready for testing," reported the chief engineer, a young woman named Sandra Cole. "We have doubled the speed of galactic standard, maybe tripled it. We will not know for certain until we run full trials." Webb nodded. "Weapon systems? Beyond anything we had before. The Assembly limited our military development for decades. Without those restrictions, our scientists have made incredible progress. Medical research?" Sandra smiled. "Dr. Price's team has already cured 3 diseases that galactic medicine considered untreatable. We have vaccines for plagues that killed millions of aliens. We could save entire species if we wanted to." But we will not share it, Webb said quietly. Not yet. Not until they understand what they lost. Webb looked out the window at the ships under construction. 200 years of being told they were dangerous, primitive, unworthy. 200 years of limitations and treaties designed to keep humanity weak. Now those chains were broken. The galaxy had exiled them. In doing so, it had set them free. On the outer edge of Sol System, the defense network detected something. A small vessel, Dravani design, had drifted across the boundary. It was not an invasion. The ship was damaged, its engines failing. Probably a scout that had gotten lost. Admiral Garrett studied the sensor readings from her command center on Luna Base. It is a single ship, her tactical officer reported. 2 life signs. Minimal weapons. They may not even know they have crossed into our space. They know, Garrett said. The border is clearly marked. No one drifts this far by accident. She considered her options. The old rules of engagement were clear: destroy any unauthorized vessel immediately. But Garrett was not interested in killing 2 lost Dravani. She wanted to send a message. Transmit on their frequency, she ordered. The communication officer nodded and opened the channel. Garrett leaned forward. Attention Dravani vessel. You have entered restricted human space without authorization. This is your only warning. Turn your ship around and leave immediately. If you proceed further, you will be destroyed. If you return, you will be destroyed. Sol System is closed. You are not welcome here. The message was simple and cold. There was no anger in it, no threats beyond the basic facts. Just a statement of reality. The Dravani ship hung in space for nearly an hour. Garrett imagined the crew inside, debating what to do, wondering if the humans were bluffing. Finally, the vessel turned and limped back toward galactic space. 3 days later, reports of the encounter spread across the galaxy. The humans were alive. They were organized. And they had no interest in rejoining the community that had cast them out. Counselor Vethron dismissed the reports publicly. A minor incident, he told the assembly. The humans are isolated and weakening. They will collapse within years. But privately, he reviewed the sensor data the Dravani scout had gathered before fleeing. The readings showed ships in Sol System that were faster, more heavily armed, and more numerous than anything humanity had possessed before exile. For the first time since the vote, Vethron felt something cold in his stomach. Something that might have been fear. In her office on Vorloth Prime, Ambassador Yura Sen read the same reports. She did not feel fear. She felt sadness. The galaxy had created this enemy. They had taken a species that wanted only to belong and pushed them into a corner. Now humanity was becoming exactly what the assembly had always feared, a power that owed nothing to anyone and trusted no one. Yura looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Sol glowed quietly, surrounded by defenses and secrets. She wondered if there would ever be a way to undo what had been done. She suspected she already knew the answer. The Harrow came from dark space. No one knew where they had originated. The ancient records called them the Devourers, a parasitic species that consumed entire worlds. They had been defeated once, thousands of years ago, and everyone had assumed they were extinct. They were wrong. The first attack hit a mining colony in the outer territories. 15,000 workers gone overnight. The second attack destroyed a military outpost with 300 ships. The third attack reached a populated world. Admiral Kethfer of the Dravani, Hegemony, commanded the combined galactic fleet sent to stop them. 1,800 vessels from 40 species, the largest armada assembled in living memory. They met the Harrow swarm above the burning world of Torvin III. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, over half the galactic fleet was destroyed. The Harrow swarm had barely been damaged. Kethfer retreated with the survivors. his mind struggling to process what had happened. The Harrow did not fight like normal enemies. They swarmed, overwhelming defenses with sheer numbers. They adapted to weapons almost instantly, and they felt nothing, no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. The galactic standard weapons barely scratched them. Emergency sessions filled the assembly chamber on Valoran Prime. Species that had celebrated humanity's exile now screamed at each other, assigning blame, demanding solutions. Councillor Vethran sat in silence, watching his carefully constructed political order collapse. "We must evacuate the outer territories," one delegate shouted. "Abandon everything and fall back to the core systems. That will only delay the inevitable," another replied. "The Harrow do not stop. They will reach the core eventually. Then we must find a weapon, something powerful enough to destroy them. There is no such weapon. Our best scientists have tried. Nothing works." The chamber fell into desperate silence. Then a voice spoke from the back rows, Ambassador Yira Sen of the Volathi. "There may be one option," she said quietly. "The humans." Vethran's head snapped toward her. "The humans are exiled. They are not part of this assembly. They are also the only species that has developed new weapons technology in the past 14 months, Yira replied. "Our scouts detected ships in Sol System that far exceed our capabilities. If anyone has something that can hurt the Harrow, it is humanity." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates refused to even consider the idea. Others pointed out that the humans had ignored all communication attempts for over a year. A few quietly suggested that perhaps exile had been a mistake. In the end, desperation won. The assembly voted to send an official request to Earth, asking for assistance against the Harrow threat. Councillor Vethran was chosen to write the message. He spent hours on it, crafting careful diplomatic language that acknowledged the need for help while preserving the assembly's dignity. He included subtle warnings about what would happen if humanity refused the suggestions that the exile could be made permanent, that Sol System could be labeled a hostile territory. The message was sent toward the silent border of human space, on Earth. President Amanda Foster read the message in the war room beneath the rebuilt city of Geneva. She had replaced Marcus Webb 3 months earlier, after he died of natural causes. Now she faced a decision that would define her presidency. Admiral Garrett stood beside her, along with the senior military staff. Ambassador Daniel Carter had returned from retirement to advise on galactic matters. "They are threatening us," Foster said flatly. "They exile us, ignore us for a year, and now they send a message full of veiled threats asking for help." "The threats are empty," Carter replied. "They have nothing left to threaten us with. Their fleet is broken. Their technology is failing. They need us, which means we could refuse," Foster said. "We could let the Harrow destroy them." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. Humanity owed the galaxy nothing. If anything, the galaxy owed them. Admiral Garrett spoke carefully. "The Harrow will not stop at galactic borders. Once they finish with the assembly worlds, they will come for us. It is not a question of if, but when. So we help them to protect ourselves," Foster said. "That is one reason. But there is another." Garrett looked at the president directly. "We are better than they are. They exiled us because they feared what we might become. If we let them die when we could save them, we proved them right." Foster considered this for a long moment. Then she turned to Carter. "What do you recommend?" Carter smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I recommend we help them, but I also recommend we make them understand exactly what that means." Foster nodded slowly. "Draft a response. Make it public. I want the entire galaxy to hear what we have to say." 6 hours later, President Foster's message broadcast across every communication frequency in the galaxy. It reached Valoran Prime, the Volathi homeworld, the Dravani command ships, and 1,000 other worlds. This is President Amanda Foster of the United Earth Government. We have received the Assembly's request for assistance against the Harrow threat. After careful consideration, we have decided to respond. She paused, letting the tension build. Humanity will assist in the defense against the Harrow. Our fleet will deploy within 72 hours. But understand this clearly, we are not rejoining your assembly. We are not your allies. We do not forgive what was done to us, and we do not forget. Her voice hardened. We are choosing to help because that is who we are. We choose our own fate. We do not need your permission, your approval, or your gratitude. When this crisis is over, you will leave us alone. You will not enter our space. You will not contact us unless invited. Those are our rules. Accept them or face the Harrow without us. The message ended. Across the galaxy, leaders stared at their screens in shock. The humans were not coming back as grateful servants or desperate allies. They were coming as something else entirely. On Valoran Prime, the Assembly voted to accept humanity's terms. The vote was unanimous except for one Councillor Vethron, who sat in his seat for nearly an hour before finally raising his hand in agreement. His fingers trembled as he did it. The galaxy had asked for help. Humanity had answered. Now, everyone would learn what that answer truly meant. The human fleet arrived at Vorlith Prime on the third day. There were only 120 ships. The combined galactic forces numbered over 2,000, gathered from every corner of the galaxy to make a final stand. When the alien commanders saw the small human fleet drop out of faster-than-light travel, many of them laughed. Admiral Garrett did not care about their laughter. She had seen the battle reports from the previous engagement. She knew what the Harrow could do. And she knew something the galactic fleet did not. Numbers meant nothing against an enemy like this. Open a channel to the command frequency, she ordered from the bridge of the USS Resolute. All fleet commanders. Voices filled the channel, speaking in dozens of languages. Translator systems struggled to keep up. This is Admiral Lisa Garrett of the human fleet. I am assuming tactical command of this engagement. All vessels will follow my orders without question or delay. Anyone who refuses will be instructed to leave the combat zone immediately. The channel exploded with protests. Dravani commanders demanded to know why they should take orders from a human. Kathrani captains argued that their ships were better suited for leadership. A dozen other species joined the argument. Garrett let them talk for exactly 30 seconds. Then she cut through the noise with a single sentence. In the last engagement, you lost over 900 ships. The Harrow lost 17. If you want to repeat that performance, feel free to ignore me. Otherwise, shut up and listen. The channel went silent. Lieutenant Derek Cho sat in the cockpit of his fighter, waiting in the launch bay of the Resolute. He was 24 years old, born after the Exile vote. He had never met an alien in person. Everything he knew about them came from stories and history lessons. The stories said they had cast humanity out because they were afraid. The history lessons said they were wrong to be afraid. Now, Derek was about to fight alongside them against a common enemy. He wondered if that would change anything. The Harrow swarm appeared on sensors 3 hours later. It was massive, millions of individual units moving as one, a cloud of death sweeping toward Vorlith Prime. The planet behind them held 4 billion people. Garrett studied the swarm on her tactical display. The Harrow were not stupid. They adapted quickly, learning from every engagement. Standard weapons would not work. All human vessels, arm Prometheus fire, she ordered. Set detonation range for maximum dispersal. We need to hit them while they are still concentrated. Prometheus fire was humanity's answer to the Harrow. During the Exile, human scientists had studied every scrap of data available on the parasitic species. They had discovered that the Harrow communicated through specific particle frequencies, a kind of biological radio that let millions of units coordinate as one organism. Prometheus. Fire did not destroy the Harrow directly. It destroyed their ability to communicate. The swarm advanced. Galactic ships formed defensive lines, preparing for the same overwhelming assault they had faced before. Alien commanders gripped their controls with fear in their hearts. Human fleet. Engage, Garrett ordered calmly. The 120 human ships accelerated forward, straight into the heart of the swarm. Alien observers watched in disbelief. It looked like Suicide. Derek Cho flew with the first wave. His fighter was small and fast, designed to slip through enemy formations and deliver precision strikes. Around him, his squadron mates moved in perfect formation. Prometheus, fire away. Someone called over the radio. Bright points of light launched from the human ships and detonated deep within the swarm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Harrow began to fall apart. Units that had moved as one suddenly scattered in random directions. Coordinated attacks became chaotic collisions. The swarm that had destroyed over 900 ships in the previous battle was now stumbling, confused, leaderless. All galactic vessels, engage now, Garrett commanded. Target the isolated clusters. Do not let them regroup. The combined fleet surged forward. Weapons that had bounced off the Harrow before now tore through uncoordinated masses of parasites. Alien pilots who had expected to die found themselves destroying enemy after enemy. The battle lasted 8 hours. It was brutal and costly. The human fleet lost 31 ships. The galactic forces lost over 400. But when the final Harrow unit was destroyed, Volith Prime still stood. 4 billion lives saved. In the aftermath, Admiral Garrett allowed herself a moment of exhaustion. She had not slept in 2 days. Her ship was damaged, her crew was tired, and her heart was heavy with the weight of the dead. But they had one. Ambassador Daniel Carter arrived on Valorum Prime 3 days later. The assembly chamber was fuller than he had ever seen it. Representatives from every species had come to witness this moment. Ambassador Yura Sen met him at the entrance. Her eyes were tired but grateful. "Thank you," she said simply. "My people would not exist without what you did." Carter nodded but did not smile. "We did not do it for gratitude, Ambassador. We did it because it was right." He walked into the chamber and took his place at the speaker's podium. The same place where he had stood 18 months earlier, listening to the vote that exiled his species. Councillor Vethron rose from his seat. His face was difficult to read, but his voice carried an emotion Carter had never heard from him before: humility. "On behalf of the Galactic Assembly," Vethran said slowly, "I move that the exile of humanity be formally rescinded. I further move that Earth be invited to rejoin the Assembly with full rights and privileges." Murmurs of approval spread through the chamber. After everything that had happened, it seemed like the obvious solution. The humans had saved them. Now they should come back and take their rightful place. Carter raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent. "No." The word hung in the air. Vethran stared at him in confusion. "You do not seem to understand," Carter continued, his voice calm and cold. "We did not come back to rejoin you. We came to save lives, because that is who we are. But we remember what you did. We remember the vote. We remember being told we were not wanted." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had cheered his exile. "So here are our rules. Sol System is closed to all galactic traffic unless we invite you. Any ship entering our space without permission will be destroyed. Any attempt to threaten, sanction, or coerce us will be met with force you cannot imagine. And if you ever need our help again, you will ask politely, and we will decide if you deserve it." The chamber sat in stunned silence. "Humanity does not seek revenge," Carter said finally. "We do not want war or conquest. We simply want to be left alone to build our own future. If you can respect that, perhaps someday we can be neighbors again. But we will never again be your subjects." He stepped back from the podium. Humanity has nothing more to say. 3 weeks later, the human fleet returned to Sol System. The borders closed once more, but this time the silence felt different. It was not the silence of exile. It was the silence of choice. On the observation deck of the USS Resolute, Admiral Garrett watched the stars through reinforced glass. Beside her stood Lieutenant Cho, promoted to captain after his performance in the battle. "Do you think they understand now?" Cho asked. Garrett considered the question. "Some of them do. Others never will. But it does not matter anymore. We do not need their understanding. What do we need?" Garrett smiled, the first real smile she had allowed herself in months. "Just each other. Just our world. Just a chance to become whatever we decide to become." Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But Earth glowed warm behind them, full of life, full of hope, full of a species that had been pushed down and had chosen to rise. They had been exiled to make them weak. Instead, they had been set free, and they would never let anyone take that freedom away again.